This is Matthew Scott, business operator of Sovereign Liberty Solutions, and you are listening to Decentralize Now.
Free the people, free the markets. Decentralize Now.
Season 2.
Well, again, you're listening again to Decentralize Now, and if you've been following the podcast, if you've been following my Facebook and Busted's Facebook and the Decentralize Now, it's pretty much all we've been talking about. Like we try to talk about things from a cohesive libertarian perspective, but I have been obsessed the past couple of weeks with this issue. So if you've been following our Facebooks or anything that we're doing, you know that we've been talking about Pizzagate and human trafficking, sex trafficking, and just the scandals and the horror that's going on right now. So we have someone joining us tonight. His name's Matthew, and he is the manager and the owner of Sovereign Money Solutions. And I've actually had the pleasure of meeting with him in person and just kind of interacting with him online. And he's very knowledgeable about this subject. So this is someone I have to know more. I kind of want some questions answered for myself. So I thought it would be awesome if we could have him on the podcast, and Busted agreed. So yeah, Matthew, thanks for taking the time to speak with us and kind of share kind of your knowledge.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Busted, you said something that struck at what came out to me like a while ago. You were like, "There's all this satanic shit. Like it's been going on for a while." And I remember, Alex Jones talking about Moloch, who is a god referenced in the Bible. It's this old shit. So I guess I kind of want to ask the first question of, what's up with Moloch? You reference it, Matthew Scott, all the time. What is that? And what's the connection between Moloch? Who is that? What the fuck is Moloch? And what does it have to do with child sex trafficking?
Now you've asked Buster this or me at this point.
Oh, I'm asking you. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, I have no fucking clue.
Yeah.
So,
go ahead.
Moloch, he's referenced in Leviticus in the Bible and some other spots, and I believe it is in Leviticus where, he's highly discouraged. At a certain part of the Bible is actually kind of mentioned that you might as well, be dragged into the ocean to die, millstone around your neck or whatever. As opposed to just continuing to harm children or whatever. Don't hurt the innocent. So a Moloch was actually a deity that a certain tribe in particular was known for worship in it. And of course in the Bible you warned not to do it. And so and this reason why I'm bringing up the Bible, it's not just fancy stories matter. Well, they kind of matter even if you don't believe in that stuff. So they would worship Moloch and they would offer sacrifice. And they wouldn't offer, their best cattle, their best sheep, all that, in terms of livestock, what have you, that was prized and important, useful and practical. No, they would offer children. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't even know about this until a few weeks ago. There was like a 1920, early 20s or so silent movie. God, I forget what it was called, but one of the precursor people behind the fascist movement in Italy, Mussolini and so forth, actually directed a film where it was centered around Moloch, worship and sacrifice and children. You watch the images, you watch the video, they actually have this statue that opens up and there are flames coming up and everything. They're not literally doing it in the movie. They kind of try to make it look like that or whatever, that they're really, but they put what seems to be a child at some point is definitely moving around anything, and they put it in, and people are standing off with an adulation and so forth. And you fast forward to today, and I end up finding out that as you enter the Colosseum now, and the Vatican has helped author this and bring it about, and, it's UNESCO, it's all about cultural exchange and everything, and that's all it is. you see that same statue from that silent film. It is Moloch, and as you enter the Colosseum, where a bunch of Christians died and others and so forth, there he is. A lot of Christians and Catholics, what have you, still go through those, Taurus and so forth, and there it is. And oddly enough, beyond Moloch, you have Baal, or Baal, B-A-A-L. Again, in the Bible, I think some people dispute or argue whether he's actually kind of the same as Moloch or different. I'm not sure about that. But the idea is the same: sacrifice children. And there are Baal gateways, or Baal, however you want to pronounce it, being set up through a United Nations cultural kind of program or what have you. And there's one in New York, and there's a bunch of them all over the world for some odd reason.
Let me stop you there. Can you do that back? So because you're doing with the Bible and stuff. What the hell's going on with the United Nations setting up like temples to Baal or something? Can you do that again? For me?
They're called arches, I think, or gateways. And you can keyword search this. I'm not sure if either you could while we're doing this.
Sure.
But anybody could later on and just put BAAL plus like maybe UN sites, or BAAL plus New York or New York City, and you start digging around with a little bit of keyword searches, and you find reputable, or what's generally regarded as reputable, sources of information from like New York Times type publications or Post or what have you. You might even find like AP, and that sort of thing. And there you go. I mean, and it's corroborated. You find different sources. It's not being hidden. It's just not highly repetitious, because I think, first of all, people just kind of assume it's not a big deal. And I'm pretty sure there are a lot of journalists that aren't even like, don't even consider themselves to be propagandists or whatever, and they're trying to do a good job. They don't think anything of it. Nobody does. What's Baal? What's Baal? Or, and plenty of people they don't really see a problem with it one way or the other. And I think it's because they haven't dug down, as I think you said earlier on before this, they haven't dug down any rabbit holes. Forget the rabbit hole of Pizzagate, or the rabbit hole of something I think a little more enveloping or whatever, and instead of just Pizzagate, just the sex trafficking, purposeful, systematically supported sex trafficking. And I do put forth it is systematic. It's not just, bad people here and there, and has nothing to do with powerful government institutions and so forth. Unfortunately, I think it involves all of that.
Free the people, free the markets. Decentralize now.
I looked it up, and I'm sure you did bust it too. I found on Snopes, which it says, what's mostly false. What's true is that replicas of the arch from Sirius Temple of Baal were planned for London and New York City's World Heritage Week in April 2016. New York's project was shelved indefinitely. But what's false is that people will be worshiping there. Well, how the fuck are they going to prove that shit? Do you think Snopes is? Do you think Snopes is kind of like a? I don't know.
I didn't say people were worshiping there. That's the thing. Nobody is stating that. What I say is symbols are important.
Absolutely. No, it's absolutely true. I'm vindicating you. I think sometimes Snopes is a tool to drive people away from the truth.
It's kind of like it's kind of a sorry.
It's like a controlled.
Absolutely. But no, you're right. So yeah, great. So now the UN is transporting pieces of the Temple of Baal all over the world. So that's fucking terrifying.
They're creating replicas of it, but I mean it's in line with creating symbols. Now the thing Baal is separate from the other false god, or whatever other god, whatever you want to call it, and that's Moloch. And that's a separate thing that has happened recently with regards to the Colosseum. And again, I mean, that's funny. That's a straw man fallacy right there.
Mm.
Like, because the assumption is you're like, oh, it's false because people aren't literally praying at these or whatever, or worshiping them. No, that's what they did in the Bible to statues and idols that represented these gods. And now, oh yeah,
I want to step in here because I have a good thought. You're right. Well, the symbolism is important. So they're going to take down, like, maybe for legitimate reasons. I'm not putting a position on it, but they're going to get rid of Columbus Day, and then we're going to get rid of the Confederate flag and all these monuments and that type of thing. But hey, let's recreate statues of Baal, which were used to sacrifice kids to. That seems to be like a huge inconsistency there.
yeah. I mean, I think it represents what these major institutions and too many individuals within them, what they prefer for symbols. Because I think we can agree that what the symbol of Baal, and Moloch, what they represent, and what people in the past have definitely, inarguably, have actually done with with the symbol and what they performed in terms of ritual and what they sacrificed for it. I think most individuals that are not utterly insane or evil, whatever you want to call it, I think most people say, well, yeah, that's bad. That's a bad symbol.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's like, oh, it's just about history. Okay, that's great. But at the same time, like you said, hey, let's juxtapose this. We're going to have these symbols and what they represent, but we cannot have something that's maybe a little bit, like, well, he did some bad things, maybe like Andrew Jackson, right? He did some bad things and some good things and this, that, and the other thing. We can't have him. He's bad. We can have these, good, bad, indifferent, and I gotta tell you, there are people today, and they virtue signal, and they act like some of the individuals in early America that had slaves, right? They're horrible, evil people, and we should get rid of all of them, right? That is the argument from some people. But at the same time, we have slave labor that is imported by us ultimately, or the property owners originally, but it ultimately comes to us in the supply chain. And it's almost like in the time and circumstances that we're in and everything, and what is socially acceptable and pushed and subsidized or whatever, you're going to cast stones on those people. You have no idea what they went through. Thomas Jefferson fought to get rid of slavery. Before the Constitution was even written, he didn't succeed. Oh, well, he had a slave. Okay, I get it. But are you fulfilling your obligations for your pretended virtue now, even close to as much as he did? And I think it's pretty obvious most people don't.
Yeah.
So
no, it's so easy to talk shit about slavery that happened 400 years ago, but then to completely turn a blind eye to child slavery going on right now.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think, yeah, absolutely. That's an easy thing to do.
I mean, in China, they actually, among many other things, they actually have camps where they force labor and everything regards the Muslims. Because the state of China, the Communist Party in China, they don't like anything that competes against them in terms of the ultimate idol. And that means religion. All religion. Including Islam. So I don't care what people think.
They pretty much got rid of the Christian religion a while ago. The Christian church came under strict attack, and then they kind of went into the Western part. I can't pronounce it. I think it's the Uyghurs or something to that effect. I might mispronounce that. But that's the Islamic that they're taking care of. That's fucking terrifying.
Yeah. And, symbols are important. And when you see, like, that culture, you see madmen, absolute dictators, and mass murderers like Mao. And they are over everything else. That's a problem. But now in the West, as bad as we've been on some things, and no one's actually been good, as far as I'm concerned. There's no culture ever that actually has done remarkably better. People point to cultures, civilizations that maybe didn't have much power, and they probably didn't even last that long or whatever. Okay? Well, the whole thing is like, you look at what they did do, in terms of quantitative effect, it wasn't as much. But necessarily it wouldn't be, because there was not as much organized human action and energy within what they produced. You're talking about huge, much more masses of people way more production of goods and services and things like that, way more communications pushed out for the whole world to actually influence. And so with all of that, of course, there's going to be more of a quantitative effect. In fact, good, bad, indifferent, all of it. And so I think what people do is, my wife has actually done this quite a bit, Laurie. She's trapped people quite a few times, and they trap themselves. I mean, catch tiger by a tail. It's not very hard, and you don't even have to look for it. It ends up getting people to recognize, oh, wait a minute. So you have a problem, let's say, with America, in parts of the West. You have a much bigger problem with them because they just stole more, or they did it better than other.
Mhm.
It's remarkable, and that's just given them the whole like, oh, well, they didn't do much good. So yeah, it seems like
Yeah.
that was off on a tangent, but
No,
it
it's
came off of
beautiful.
symbols, and symbols are very important.
What kind of crazy things will our heroes talk about next? Stay tuned to find out.
So right now we talked about, the Bible, Baal and Molech, and then the kind of the United Nations trying to recreate some of these sites for whatever fucked up reason. Can you talk a little bit to us about that? What's your knowledge about the Vatican? Because we know they've been busted with child sex allegations,
Yeah.
and deliberately hiding it. That's not some conspiracy theory. That's normie tier news. We know about that. So what do you know about sort of the Vatican's role in this type of thing?
Well, I don't have super specific knowledge pertaining to it, and I don't have the oracle at my hands right now. I'm talking on a cell phone, and I don't dare multitask on it. No one is an older phone, and so forth. But you guys do have computer access, and maybe you could even pull it up. But in the Vatican, I believe it's still ongoing. There's an individual. He's either second or like third in terms of rank in the hierarchy, and that's where evil kind of lies. It's in the social organism that starts to become greater than the individual and individuals within that have true relationships and so forth. The state and the social organism kind of supersedes and absorbs, kind of like the Borg and the Star Trek. I think it was the original Star Trek. But so with regards to Vatican, if you look, second or third, that person is mired, and I forget which nation state it is. Probably a little loud for where I am right now, but the nation state, the jurisdiction in question is actually has this person in their grasp, and they're still going through the case, and it is child pornography. It is child, I believe, even sex trafficking. It has to do with children in sex. And, the proper kind of keyword search will get you to the individual, and that individual appears to me to generally be being protected, which the Catholic Church has been known to do that. And I'm not going to say that other churches, I mean, I know people that have been in some other ones that do some interesting things, but not necessarily sex trafficking. Pennsylvania, for example, is extraordinarily well known for their Catholic churches, and people higher up within some of these Pennsylvanian churches. They are well known for protecting pedophiles, ones that act, not the so-called virtuous ones that you kind of hear about and see in formerly Salon magazine, but it's been replicated in other places because they're virtuous because they don't act on it or whatever. Supposedly, I'm sure some maybe don't because they're scared shitless, which they really should be, because if you act on it, you're committing egregious violent offense and so forth. But yeah, Pennsylvania is very well known, and I do remember there is a key legislator in the state assembly, if they call it the state assembly there, but the state house or senate. And that fellow's actually a Democrat, and he, even up to recently, he's really been pushing things in that state. But yeah, the Catholic Church, I mean, sometimes you perceive. You shouldn't always judge a book by its cover, but sometimes when you keep on seeing some of the murals that they have and the symbols they kind of put out, and there are other things, but God, this was when I think, like, not this Pope we have now, but the Pope before. I believe when they were deliberating whatever they call the major cardinals or whatever. I remember I was at my mother's and she had mainstream media on. I'm like, oh, whatever. And they were doing this live thing, and they're in this important place in the Vatican or near it or whatever. And the picture, it was just sits right in front of me, and I swear to God, like they had two men outside of this building where they were deliberating on who's going to be the next, pope. And they were dressed in clown attire. I swear to God. I mean, they're not literally, but the stuff they were wearing. I mean, sometimes you see like some of those British higher enforcement officials or whatever, and they're wearing some weird looking stuff. But this is clownish. And I just, at the end of the day, I think there are a lot of tells out there. And look, I think there are a lot of great Catholics out there, by the way, 100%. I think there are a lot of, good Muslims and good Christians of this sect and Hindus and so forth. I don't broad brush everybody on something like that, but yeah, the institution's messed up. And if you just kind of take a look at it, sometimes even from a distance, and you see something like that, I'm not sure why people don't dig in more, except symbols and stories really reverberate. And when the mainstream media and schools and everything that is important and put up high for everybody to see is very official, is an appeal to authority, everything. It says don't question stuff like that. Look at since John F. Kennedy was murdered, I believe it is declassified FBI document. I don't think it's CIA, but you could look. They coined conspiracy theorists. They were saying you must point these people out as engaged in conspiracy theories, and they're lunatics, crazy. And what it did, and it's worked since the 60s, but it's lost its efficacy. It doesn't work as much anymore. It's a logical fallacy. It's an ad hominem fallacy. Mm-hmm. People really need to shut that down, because look where we are now. Jeffrey Epstein, that is just the tip of the iceberg, and even himself, once you dig into it, this, obviously he's a tip, but he's a tip of the tip. He literally is the best thing that ever happened. I've known about the guy for many years now, and I would talk about it, and I would put it on Facebook, and I would talk to people in person about it. People didn't really care, but now it's different. Now there's meme magic out there. I prefer to actually write stuff. I prefer to read stuff. I prefer to see large logical argumentation, corroborating evidence, and this and that and the other thing. And I'm very analytical, and I've just found people, they beyond not maybe being as analytical, you could get closer to something what I do without even trying at this point. But we don't have a memory anymore. We've lost memory and focus. The social media doesn't help with that, and the education system, rendered this, and yeah. So, feel like I've kind of gone onto a rabbit trail for you guys. So
that was
sorry.
Beautiful. No, and speaking of Epstein, have you guys heard about? What happened with Prince Andrew? This was just released like literally 2 hours ago. Have you seen that shit?
Was that he said something about being he feels like he let his family down, like being friends with Epstein or something like that.
Fucking understatement of the year. Yeah. Like there's that video of him.
I saw it briefly. I had looked into it.
Yeah. So understatement of the year. There's a video of him, an interview, and this was released by the British Broadcasting Company. Now it's all over the internet. Now it's a couple hours ago that I'm aware of, where he's in Epstein's mansion, where he was, punished. He was punished with house arrest at his fucking Manhattan mansion. And
after how horrible!
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
how horrible. And Andrew is in the mansion, and they recorded him, and he's looking out the window, and he just smiles and waves at the cameras like, "Ha, fuck you," and then he goes away. And they busted him, and now he's had to come out and say, "Yes, it is true. I was in Epstein's mansion after the trial of him, convicting him of sex trafficking." And his response is, "Well, it really is a shame, because it's just not a good look." Like you said, Bus, like it looks bad on the royal family. And those pictures of him with that girl has got to be at least 16 or 17. And she's come forward, according to the interview, and stated, "Yeah, I was instructed to have sex with Prince Andrew." Her quote was really interesting. He was a gentleman about it, like he thanked me, and then Prince Andrew has stated, "Well, he's never met."
What the
What's
fuck?
that?
That's
But he was a gentleman about it.
That's so horrible.
Well, it goes to show like the brainwashing she must have gone through. Like, he raped me, but he was nice. He was a nice guy.
I mean, she could have been, put under MK Ultra conditions where, they literally brainwash you with techniques that people used to think it only happened in the Soviet Union magically, and one of the easy things you can do is just take a person and put them in a dark room for a very long time, have them tied up.
So our government would never do those things to us.
No, our government serves the people. They would never.
They would never endanger us purposely for their own benefit and gain.
Well, you see how not transparent these things are called governments. I mean, the monopoly, compulsory territorial regimes. There is no competition. The best you can do under that general framework is to have something like a constitutionally restrained democratic republic, like we kind of had, and it never operated the best of ways. And one of the reasons I would say is because people like Alexander Hamilton and others, they jeopardized it right from the very beginning. I don't think they wanted to get this bad or whatever, but they wanted control. Jefferson believed in an economy where you had independent people that were sovereign and capable. They were able to perform in involuntary markets, and they could produce a lot of wealth, and they could live good lives and everything, and that's how you'd have a powerful nation. And people like Hamilton, they believed in major corporations because he saw that with Britain and everything. He just wanted, to ultimately be separate from Britain and have his own way, and he had some slightly better ideas, perhaps. But in the Constitution, you look into the judiciary, they had to pass a law not too long after the Constitution, a statute, to actually flesh that out. They left that almost like a blank slate to be manipulated right from the get-go. And of course, the Constitution is actually illegal per the original Constitution, the Articles of Confederation. Right. I mean, and I'm not going to sit here and say, well, let's just throw everything away, because who else has something that they're implementing now that's better? The only thing you can do is decentralize now.
There you go.
The only thing you can do is get what is within your purview and influence and power, and start with that. And I think these home runs, first of all, people monopolize the whole thing. They monopolize they monopolize having affect change, as like Obama would have said, whatever, right? And change can be bad or good or whatever, but people monopolize it within politics instead of, hey, there's social, there's also economic. You see what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And then beyond even that, we somehow monopolize it within the political to just, hey, we're gonna, I don't know what I can and should not say or whatever. I don't think you guys care, but it's like you let out one load on the president. Like, it's retarded. I don't know why people even think that works, but you're first of all monopolizing human action and influence within the political, and it just tells me you're looking for the hero archetype to save you. And people are still looking for Ron Paul, by the way.
Sure.
Pretty damn close to purely principled and everything. And, the whole thing is, I love the guy. I hate saying but you really need more than just being philosophically sound on a lot of things. Congruent. It's helpful and it's part of the mix, but you need more than that. Because as soon as he was called racist and that kind of thing, that and it took more in 2012, but it wasn't in him anymore to fight back and say, hey, those are logical fallacies, bull crap. Look what you people do. It's like we buckled, and I don't want to say I'm criticizing him or anything. I'm really not. It's just we all have a role to play, I guess you'd say. We need the hammer. We need more hammer.
Are you enjoying the podcast? Just kidding. We know you are, and you're welcome. You're listening to Decentralized Now.
Do you know a god-darn thing about Moloch? Do you know what they do in the California redwood forest, like in spring or summer or whatever?
Let
For
me
a very
stop
long
here
time,
and kind of
multiple
interrupt for a
decades.
second because I
Yeah,
want to talk about that. We were talking about that before the podcast. So we
yeah.
talked about Moloch, Baal, who is that in the Bible? This shit kind of going on with the Catholic Church, and you can just a simple Wikipedia search will show you some pretty horrific shit. So let's kind of move into that. So there's Moloch and the Bohemian Grove, and I believe it was Alex Jones who kind of blew the lid off with that. So and you're kind of going there. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you've discovered with the Bohemian Grove, Moloch, what that means?
Okay, yeah. First, I'll just say, and I imagine you do it, but whenever I say Wikipedia, something like that, or Free Encyclopedia, hell, even Britannica, whatever is out there, check the underlying sources
Sure.
and do homework. And sometimes it comes down to an analysis. You weigh it out. Did this most probably happen? Is this most probably what it means? And then if you have to, I table it and I come back to it later when I get more evidence or more stories, more corroboration or whatever. Everything's a learning part of the learning process and verification, and sometimes you find out you're wrong, and so you revisit it. You have courage to admit when you're wrong and that kind of thing too. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes I don't thoroughly enough check an article and find where they hide this actually didn't happen or whatever. And believe me, they actually sometimes do that. They capture you with a headline in the first paragraph or two or whatever, and then they kind of admit, yeah, what he did really wasn't illegal, but yeah. But the headline, everything suggests otherwise. So I don't know. It just felt like saying it because Wikipedia can be abused, but if you check the underlying sources, it can be great. So with regards to Bohemian Grove,
Wait, Buzz,
yeah,
did you have to
Alex.
say?
I was just gonna say,
I'm sorry.
they tried doing that with certain people. Like they did that with Louis C.K. They put this big article out that he had basically molested this woman, and then you read the article and that wasn't what happened. But everybody reads the
Yeah.
headline, and it fucked with
Mhm.
his career because nobody read the article. They just saw the headline and started sharing it and shit. No one looked into it, but it just how the title can be misleading and they can push misinformation just with the title.
Yeah, this has been happening for a very long time too. It's more flagrant and obvious than ever before, which is wonderful for me because I've only been saying, hey, you get a media oligopoly since like 2001 or two or whatever.
Hmm.
Super obvious. Ben Bigdickian wrote a book called The New Media Monopoly. His most updated version of that book was like only 2004 or something like that. But back then, you read it's like there are only six big corporations that own just about all the media. Now the internet was its infancy back then, and there's been a lot of absorption by some mega corporations and central entities, what have you. But that's where you find the most diversification. It's in the internet, and of course, that's where you see decentralization, and then of course that's where you see they're starting to go after domain name registrars that are starting to, pull out and be like, yeah, we can't give you service. And I'm seeing interesting things. I actually predict that they're flat out just going to take away. Anyway, and I say that's important because things I'm about to talk about, and you can see the evidence for yourself and everything, and read about it. I think this is just going to be cleaned off the internet someday, and you're not going to find it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to make sure anybody that does spread the information, they have mirrors and they've had downloads and everything. They're just going to. It is going in that direction with how much censorship there is. And I'm a private company, and believe me, I believe in private property principles, individual liberty. I can paint that landscape out very well and connect all these dots. It's like, for me, it's like arithmetic. I totally get it. And I can prove it every step of the way and everything like that, right? Yeah, the only thing I can't do for people is have them feel good about what I'm saying because it's the truth, and the truth sometimes hurts and so forth, right?
Absolutely.
But yeah, so to the Bohemian Grove. So this has been ongoing. Richard Nixon, you can look this up. Richard Nixon even talked about the Bohemian Grove, okay? And you can find the audio. It was part of the leaked like audio tapes he had because he recorded like pretty much everything. And to my knowledge, he did up on his own volition. He himself and probably a couple other people that kind of did the technical part to it because I think he was paranoid. And you look at how much spying goes on even in regards to the president, right? Whoever the president is, well, of course you should be paranoid when you're the president or you have any high office. You should be very concerned if you have any skeletons in the closet, Therefore, you shouldn't even be in office. But so Bohemian Grove, Richard Nixon actually talked about it, okay? And he called it the most faggoty goddamn thing I've ever been to or whatever, right? And he's kind of like funny about it. No, why do you say it like that? again, a different time, and oh, whoa, he used a word I don't like. Well, it doesn't really matter. You go with this, okay? So Alex Jones, late 90s, maybe early 2000s, he got into the Bohemian Grove, and he basically appeared to be one of the people going in. Now, the people that typically go into the Bohemian Grove are people usually politically inclined and associated. They're actually politicians themselves, a lot of them, right? But not necessarily all politicians, but they're mainly Republican. Now, this isn't me like, oh, Democrats must be good. No, they've got their own special little things that they do and everything like that. This isn't pro-Democrat, Republican, or Libertarian people or whatever. It is what it is. I'm just painting the portrait that you end up finding out as you dig into this. And so they go there, higher socioeconomic, politically involved and connected. We've had presidents go there. Bill Clinton might have gone there as a Democrat president. Not 100% on that. You could look at that. Maybe even it was Jimmy Carter. I think there was like one Democrat that went. But Richard Nixon went. I think even Ronald Reagan went. And he had all these people go, and goddamn, I can't imagine George H.W. didn't. George W. might have not, just because it had come out. So anyway, they go there, and what they do is they have sex orgies. Go around. I mean, you talking about tall trees. It's very, wooded, and very kind of separate from things. And he got in there with a video camera, secret video camera, like near his chest or what have you, hidden well enough that no one ever noticed it. And you see the video footage and everything, and this is like the big enchilada and the whole deal, right? So it's all kind of weird and everything, right? You see these, okay, whatever, and you get to the part where they are having their cremation of care ceremony. He actually got some paperwork from it, and he showed it after the fact and everything like that. But it was called cremation of care. Now you think about it, cremation of care, what the devil would that mean? Well, during that ceremony, it's really dark out, and there's this big owl statue. And you have all these people around it and everything in the back, and you have a good person that's conducting the ceremony. And they end up burning a child in effigy. Now what that means is they have a representation, an idol, something that kind of stands in, representing the child, the youth, the innocence. And they burn it. They burn it as an offering to Moloch to, I think, assuage their feelings of guilt and to be renewed in the spirit of having no care. Cremating care. And part I'm just saying here in terms of what I think cremation of care means, that's what I get out of it. That's what it makes sense that's what that means. And so, I watched that way back when, right? Earlier 2000s, maybe it was even like 2004 or 5 or whatever when I watched it. And you talk about it, and a lot of people are just like, yeah, well, whatever. And it's interesting. Actually, I believe in that same film, Jones, after the fact, actually went to one of the fellows that was there, has been there before. Because it's like these other Bilderberg meetings that are had once a year separately. It's a different place in Europe, different people too, not all the same or anything, but some of them are. They plan to do things. They plan to synchronize public law and different things like that. Gosh, where am I going with that? I just did that to myself.
You're good, man. No, it's fucking good.
It's just really screwy because I'd point out, he interviewed this guy, and if you probably watched the documentary, I think he said he did, but the guy kind of confronts him because Jones is confronting him, and he's like, "You took an oath, you promised," and he's like trying to get him on, like, he's trying to get Alex Jones on. You promised. That place is sacred, basically. I don't think he would use the word sacred, but it was kind of like that. And Jones just smiling at him like, yeah, no. It's garbage because what are you guys doing there? So I've been telling people since then, do you trust people in public office that go to these freakazoid things where they have goddamn group fucking sex? There are stories, not absolutely confirmed, that there are children there. Okay, now I don't think that part's been solidly proven one way or the other. But you have that. It's that goddamn fucking effigy. It's that goddamn ritualistic sacrifice to that fucking to Moloch, who's appearing. Ever since then, I've been noticing It's kind of here, it's kind of there. I'm seeing this and seeing this. People mention him, and they mention ritual. Yeah, it's disconcerting, and I've never accepted that people go to things like this that are higher socioeconomic and then also political. They're deranged. They should have no office. They should immediately be voted out.
Well, yeah,
But
I
people
absolutely agree.
don't
I
do it.
mean, it's like I think Busted. I don't know if we had said this on a podcast or if just in a conversation, but you were talking about like France, like what happened the yellow vest thing. They raised taxes a little bit, and then people flipped their shit and took to the streets. We've had public information for years that
Yeah,
we're
it's like
ruled by a cabal of pedophiles. We don't do shit.
some places, yeah, they're like, oh, we're gonna raise the fee to ride the train by 35 cents, so they burn the fucking trains down. Like, fuck you. We have fucking politicians stealing our children, and just sitting back like no one's doing anything. Talking about it, impeaching Trump. I could give a fuck about impeaching Trump. I want to know why the government is stealing children. I want to know that. I want to
Yep.
know why Epstein was murdered in a high security prison, and we just don't talk about it anymore. I want those questions answered first.
Mm.
And just on the Bohemian Grove thing, the whole documentary is actually you can find it. I'm on
Easily.
DuckDuckGo. I just searched it. Pretty much the whole thing's here. I've been kind of watching it while you've been talking about it, and yeah, like he interviews all these people beforehand. And it's such a beautiful place. It's a wonderful place. Talk about all these great things there, and then there's obviously the event itself. I can't find scrolling through at the end where the guy was kind
Yeah,
of
he's a very tall
chastising.
gentleman, and I think he's been like a Republican. What do they call it? An advisor of sorts, and he's been a political commentator. I don't know if he still is, but I want to say his last name's Gerber or something weird like that, or Gerger or whatever. But my memory will probably fail me in terms of being absolutely accurate on that name because, quite frankly, I haven't watched it for well over a decade.
You think you've heard it all? You haven't heard shit. Stick around for more Decentralized Now.
Okay, so we did that. So Moloch, Baal, the Bible. We talked about there's tons of shit in the Catholic Church. And the stuff in the Catholic Church we found about recently. Who knows what's been going on in the pre-internet era for the past thousand years that they essentially had global domination. Who knows what kind of fucked up shit has happened over the centuries. But we went from the Bible time, the Catholic Church shit that we know about, Bohemian Grove. It's an open field. Go ahead.
The Catholic Church has been doing this for a very long time. When there are sexual abuses, claims of such, let's just be like, well, they move these people. They don't tell the
authorities.
The new population. They don't tell the new sheep. And sometimes they move the same people around multiple times. I mean, compare this to something like, and this is just a great anecdote, I guess. I know it is. I tell the story to people quite frequently, actually, when it can possibly organically enough come about. Remember the Penn State, again, Pennsylvania, interesting. Penn State, I think he was an assistant coach to Joe Paterno. His name was Sandusky. Remember that guy?
Yeah. He got caught like forcing himself on the players and shit.
Yeah, and he had a children's fund and that kind of thing. He helped children, and he was caught doing this with children too. God knows what else besides just kind of participating in it. I mean, who knows? But here's the thing: I remember as that came out, and I was looking at some of the facts that were emerging and representations. I remember a former friend of mine, we used to own a duplex together, and we'd talk a lot about different things, and he would always be devil's advocate anyway, but he just wanted to believe the world is a lot safer and friendly than it really is, and here I am like, I don't care if it is or not, I only care about the truth, I'm going to go where the truth leads me. So as that was coming out and everything, and he was more of a sporto kind of worshiper than I ever was, I told him, I said, look, I'm reading that people knew about this ahead of time. And people that Penn State staff and so forth, and they didn't do anything. And I think it may still be argued one way or the other. Nobody knows for sure. I'm not concerned about it, but Joe Paterno may have known. I don't know about that, but but at any rate, yeah, I remember talking with him about it, and and I said something to the fact, people really need to come out with that. Like that's ridiculous. That's evil. And he had something to say about it. He said, "Well, Matthew, shame for you to even be saying." It's like, look, they're protecting the institution, they're protecting the ball, the status, the story behind it, that Joe Paterno and all these things he did. And like, I look at him and say, you're gonna elevate goddamn reputation of, I don't care what it is. And he said, well, what if it was the country, the Constitution, everything? I'm like, I'd burn it to the ground. I would burn it to the ground. And he said, you're insane. You're crazy. And I just pointed out, look, all these so-called little evils you're kind of going along with, you really think it's just Penn State and there wasn't something else going on? There isn't more stuff going on in Pennsylvania and in other places and so forth. And I knew all the stuff kind of happened at the time anyway, generally speaking. And I knew about, well, occult practices and sex magic and stuff like that people really believe. And higher echelon people really believe in this stuff, and they participate and do this stuff. And he just literally would have nothing to do with it, and he just flat out said, well, you know what, like, I can see at least where they're coming from. I'm like, okay, I can see, and I totally would have nothing to do with them, and I would have forced their hand if I was their spouse or whatever. But call me crazy when I don't want children being fucking harmed and trafficked and had sex with and raped and killed or whatever else may be going on.
What the fuck is sex magic?
Well, that's what actually that great question, Buzz, because I was about to ask about that. What can you tell us a little bit about sex magic and Aleister Crowley? Have you looked into that shit?
Okay, so people might say, well, that's a name I've never heard of before.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it makes sense. So, I'm trying to think. The 1800s going into the 1900s, he wrote quite a few books, into occult, generally speaking, and ritualistic things you can do. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've read everything that he's produced. I do have a big, thick book of his that everything in the world tells me to not do too much with it, but I've opened it up. Look a few spots just to kind of confirm some stuff. If you ever heard of Mark Dice, he's a YouTube personality. These days, he comes off as very jocular and he's having fun, kind of like, and I can see where people may come from. It's like, oh, he's just like Republican stew. She supports him. He kind of delves into stuff that's kind of like, well, he's not like mainstreamy, but he's closer to that than he used to be. But occasionally he'll bring certain things up. And way back when, he used to actually talk about Aleister Crowley and read passages in regards to him. And he'd point out, in terms of media, symbology that's going on, and the common themes, the common symbols that are cast out, what they mean, what they generally maybe mean. And he spoke to that. So, I think I might have first found out reading one of Mark Dice's books time ago and seen some of his early videos. I kind of, looked a bit into it, and, he took a rabbit trail and visiting different sites and everything, reading different articles, hearing what different people had to say and everything. And, it's just really, really, really interesting that you end up finding out more than anything. And this is really key. It's like, oh, Aleister Crowley, that guy doesn't matter. Like that's ridiculous. He was on the Beatles album.
He was.
The Sgt. Pepper one, I think it's called, where they have all these famous faces in the background. But the first thing I would say is, well, wait a minute. Okay, so you think it's innocuous. Why would they, if this guy is like a nobody, right? He just wrote some occult literature that has no importance whatsoever, no influence. The keyword is influence. Why is he on that? Why would the Beatles? It's just really interesting. So I'm going to go into why it's really interesting. There was a fellow, a professor of a prestigious university or college back in the, God darn it, I'm trying to remember his name, but he was known for saying, tune out, drop out.
Timothy Leary.
Timothy Leary. You can go find the interview now, and he's given an interview where he actually talks about Aleister Crowley, and he says, "Look, I wish he was able to live long enough to see what he accomplished, what he and we all accomplished." He talks a bit about it, and you actually see in the background a very occultic representation of something that you see everywhere. I mean, it's on the back of the dollar bill and everything. It's effing everywhere, and people make gestures, key celebrities, politicians, so forth, and you see it in magazines. It's littered across the landscape. But in this interview, Timothy Leary basically says, "Well, no, I'm an acolyte essentially of Aleister Crowley, and this was a guy that was key in kickstarting and putting into motion the sexual revolution, the drug revolution." And look, I'm not going to say people are inherently bad or anything like that for doing things a little bit differently or whatever. In fact, quite frankly, I think generally speaking, if you can handle whatever it is, no negative side effects, whatever, and no one is even telling you that they're seeing anything negative, then you can probably handle it. At least I'll say that about certain drugs, whatever. Marijuana is innocuous. I mean, I've smoked it before. I've only smoked it probably a couple dozen times in my life. Never even carried. I've just been offered from time to time, and it does the same thing to me as alcohol. And alcohol makes me more jubilant, a little more cheerful, but very philosophical, even more than I inherently, more than I usually am. But when you start reading into what Aleister Crowley wanted, thought of drugs and sex and what it would do to society, and what you start to realize it would cause conflict, it would cause tension, it would bring immorality, it would bring us closer to something, and he never said, to my knowledge, it would bring us closer to worshiping Baal, worshiping Moloch, and doing the thing that people did long ago, for sure anyway, right?
You're currently listening to the best podcast in the whole fucking universe.
Decentralize now.
Before we cut out there, you were talking about Timothy Leary and how he kind of said, he was going to bring us back to Baal, bring us back to is it Murloc? Am I saying it right? Murloc?
It's M. And there are two different spellings I've seen for it. The Molech, and there is ULO. And I prefer saying Moloch, spell it with a U, but
while we cut out there, I was able to actually find that video. I can't get it in such a way I can play it back. I've got it here on my phone. I've just been kind of watching it.
I did not literally say he said he's bringing us back to that. I said, he with what he said, essentially that is where he's bringing us to, because that is what in Aleister Crowley's writings he wrote about how he could debauch a society by getting to their boy, for example. So the sexual revolution, the drug revolution, and they did a lot of it with the music. And I have an interest in kind of perspective on why it's music that hits people most, and why it.
Well, he also said in this little video, it said that one of his things was getting people of influence, getting people in influential positions.
Oh yeah.
To help control the masses. Timothy Leary was basically one of those people, and that would make sense because now you're bringing up music.
I believe he was a CIA recruit.
Very influential over people.
Mm-hmm.
You think Timothy Leary was a CIA agent? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm not going to 100% say that, but you can pull up some stuff now, and
he worked for the government, did he not, as a scientist?
To me, I 100% see it as highly probable he was. But again,
is he the luckiest CIA agent ever? All right, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take a lot of acid and hang out with chicks that get naked all the time. He's like, oh, fuck no.
Yeah.
So horrible.
It beats the Bay of Pigs invasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
What was the point
nice.
where and I'm gonna instantly do some shit to try to debug my computer because here's what happened, Matt. I got really high and I looked at my email and I checked my spam folder and there was a fucking email that said, "Oh, your Facebook has a problem." I'm like, "Oh shit, my Facebook has a problem." I clicked on it and I might have a virus because of that. So,
Oh no.
but
Yeah, I've noticed. Yeah, I've noticed the spam has some of it's gone more sophisticated, and they'll duplicate business pages, whatever. Let's say some kind of account you're paying on, and they periodically actually make it look very real. But I remember to look at the from sender and what it is. Sometimes there's an extra I or whatever. Yeah. I don't trust that stuff, and when something kind of rings with me, I just go to the website myself. I never click a link. That's just I've learned to do over time when it's unsolicited stuff.
I get
Whether it
those
be a phone
calls a
call or-
lot.
Oh, yeah.
You're past due on this. Or you need to do this, or I'm calling with some sort of, you owe money on it.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your website? Prove you're fucking real.
oh, exactly.
Yeah, they never can. They try it with Postal Service. They try it, the Treasury and the IRS is almost always garbage. I know a few people have actually fallen for stuff.
FBI, and you missed a federal court date. You need to pay us $500, or you're going to go to prison. Now, what you need to do is you need to go down to the gas station or the local Western Union, and you need to either wire us $500 to Nigeria, or you need to read us like 40 Amazon gift cards over the phone. As if the FBI would settle a debt with Amazon gift cards and iTunes iTunes credit.
Madam, you are in serious trouble with the IRS. You must read to me a iTunes gift card.
Yeah, I have like a colleague. He listens to he watches the one YouTube channel of many, obviously, and yeah, this is guy that actually he calls these people back and puts them to the ringer. I'm sure there's more than one person that does that, but it's pretty funny. He changes his voice to some woman or whatever seems most fitting to use or take advantage of these people. Then towards the end, he dresses the person down and is like, "Yeah, I just wasted 2 hours or whatever you're talking." Yeah, it's pretty cool. Oh, sorry, that's complete. Yeah.
Well, I feel like Matthew. I want to get into this too. The sex magic. So there's Aleister Crowley.
Oh yeah, I do want to know what the fuck sex magic is. That is
So I felt like you were kind of preparing that. So there's Aleister Crowley, and if you're listening, you don't know who that is. He was called the wickedest man in the world. This black magic magician who wrote lots of shit. And you even said that he had influenced Timothy Leary, who is another fascinating figure. So tell us a little bit about sex magic, because and this is what was so crucial, what was so interesting about what you were saying. You were saying there's the pedophile who does it for a biological reason, but there's another subset of someone who does it for a more spiritual reason. Can you kind of walk us back through that?
Yeah, so I was getting towards that second tier or whatever. The first tier is the individual that's a real public danger. And of course, a danger to private individuals within the sphere of activity, right? Okay, so yeah, you have the first tier of sexual abuser of children. It's just a biological urge, and I think is induced because of trauma. Usually, I think there's some anomalous situations that happen with genetics and some other things that really can't be controlled. Can't give certainly a percentage, I know for any kind of degree of certainty, but I tend to believe that you do have what really seem to be just, I guess, evil people or whatever that just act on it or whatever. But it doesn't matter, right? So you have those that act on the urges that feels good to them, and then you have those that they do it for domination, the power over another individual, and the weakest of individuals happen to be quite frankly, children. They're sometimes more innocent, less guarded. You can lure them with different things. I mean, candy. I mean, it's ridiculous, right? And they can be threatened very easily. They'll believe in the boogeyman, you know. Okay, so you have those people that they enjoy sadistically, you know, they enjoy abusing them. They enjoy just totally dominating another human being. Obviously, there are some that just get smaller women, and they're big enough or whatever, and they'll do that too. And you know, there's some people that do it to smaller men, whatever. But children, you know, people definitely do that for domination. And then you have the third tier, and those are the people. You know, they may be sadists and everything like that too, but no, they grasp for real power. They grasp for real social power. Well, that doesn't make sense. Well, it does make sense if you believe in the garbage that they do, and I'm going to call it garbage, but there's something going on, and I just think, frankly, call it placebo effect or whatever, but placebo effect on steroids is insane. You engage in sex magic. So here's kind of what it is. Like you get a child. You get someone that's going into puberty. Sometimes before, obviously, but they're gonna be going into puberty, and there's a lot of biological, emotional stuff, physical stuff going on, right? Huge changes, a metamorphosis, quite frankly, incredible amount of energy, potent. And the concept is to get that, to induce that and get it to oneself, to practice rituals that involve not just obviously sex magic. So you penetrate them, you do these things to them, and you take away that innocence, and you make these individuals jaded, psychologically scarred, and you do things that can just absolutely change them very negatively for the rest of their life. It's a very demeaning imposition, and it in kind of like an alchemical way. If you do it the way that you're supposed to do it per ritual, you get power and energy out of it. Now, here's the thing, like spiritually, almost, right? People in the higher echelons actually believe in them. You look at a lot of the Hollywood elite. You look at the people in the music industry, the artists, especially, that sort of thing. But it's more than just the artists. You look at the Harvey Weinstein type people or whatever. Mm-hmm. Now, apparently, just him. Maybe it's just a woman or whatever. It's nothing about woman, I know for sure. But you look at people in high levels. I mean, my God. I mean, Dennis Hastert. You might remember this fellow. He was Speaker of the House of Representatives, longest serving for a Republican, and he might be longest serving, period, but definitely for Republican. He rose to that position very quickly after assuming office, like very quickly. It didn't take too long. Usually it does. And turns out he is wrestling coach, and God knows what he was doing, while he was politician or whatever. He was having sex with children. He was having sex with teenagers, and you can look into it and everything. I mean, it happened after, this all came out officially after he left office, and it's insane to think about it. But one of his victims that he may had contract with, is like, hey, shut up about this. I'll give you $1 million, whatever it was. The actual numbers out there. He actually ended up countersuing this guy for breach of contract, but it's insane because a contract to be enforceable has to be, a lawful, legal, action. That is not legal what happened whatsoever. So that is not a contract that was actually enforceable, but, the courts of law will actually hear it because law is a ridiculous thing at this point. It's nothing about justice or injustice. No one understands it, really. Most people don't.
Free the people. Free the markets. Decentralize now.
So, anyway, what happens with the sex magic, right? You see people that engage in this, whether for sure they did it or not, okay? But I'm gonna just point out, what's that woman's name? And one of you may know. I think it's Abramovich.
Yeah, Marina Abramovich. That's right.
Yeah, and I might be mispronouncing some of the names, but it's Vic or Vish or
You
whatever.
got it.
I'm trying not to butcher, but at any rate, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen any of her ritualistic sacrifices, depictions of it, videos of it, stills of it, and it's utterly insane. I mean, she's mixing pig's blood and semen, and she's drawing pentagrams, and you get these insane statements. She's had like cakes of people made, and they're cutting into them. What's really interesting is we look long ago, and I've never looked into this, so I'm not going to say this person in particular in regards to the music industry, but Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. There's an Alice in Wonderland themed music video they did, and actually in it, at one point, Alice is actually a cake, and they're cutting her up and serving to like the Mad Hatter and so forth. And I don't, I don't know that means anything in regards to him because I've never found anything, but it's just really interesting that you got Timothy Leary and how big he was, and he's undoubtedly very influential in the sexual and drug revolution in the United States. And then Aleister Crowley wrote about how important it was with pharmacological pharmacia, or there's a Greek preface to the word pharmacy, to pharmaceutical, and to drugs. And it's not just the illegal drugs, it's the legal drugs too. The stuff that good old doctors will prescribe because whatever, right? And Aleister Crowley wrote about how important it was to get people to be on this kind of stuff and to introduce this into their bodies. So of course you notice how much influence he had, and you notice key here. So I mentioned the music industry in particular. The music industry was really preeminent in this because Hollywood had gone on to it. You had the laws started going a certain direction in some things too, but not nearly as much as obviously the music. And you look at he's considered the father of rock and roll, and I found most people don't know who he is, but he was a black man that practiced what at the time there was only blues and some other stuff in terms of genre. There was no real rock and roll, but his name was Robert Johnson, and he was the guy that infamously took a sojourn, and he was gone for like 9-10 months, something like that. He just kind of abruptly left, and he was playing music on his guitar, and I've watched the documentary. And
he was notoriously not a very good musician before he disappeared.
Yeah, he was absolutely terrible, right? And so he came back, and he said that he made a deal with the devil. And musicians and other people, but musicians as they aspire, and they will actually go to a key intersection in Clarksdale, Mississippi. I forget what routes or whatever they are. But people will take dirt and everything there, and they'll try to invoke it one way or the other and try to get a deal and this and that, right? But that's what he said, and when he came back, he just was absolutely amazing. And people that were friends with him or around him before, during, not during the sojourn, but when he came back immediately and after, some of his friends just said, I remember that the videos, and they stated that I never saw him practice. He came back like 9 months later, and look, what I'm going to add right here myself, this is not him saying, like, he said he made a deal with the devil. In his songs after he came back, he wrote about being one step ahead of the devil because he knows he's going to collect his dues. He sold his soul. He's and if you listen to the music, I've listened to some of it, and it's actually scary. I'm getting a little bit of goosebumps about it. This is the father of rock and roll, and he merged basically blues and something else and added his own thing to it that ultimately led the way eventually to people like Elvis and so forth, the king of rock and roll. And it's kind of funny how we kind of look at music and other celebrities and Hollywood movies and so forth, and how they call stars and everything, and they're given titles of prince and king and such. Is kind of interesting how we make idols of so many, fallen human beings. We're all fallen, and I know this is very, religious or what have you, but I used to come at this more from just a philosophical perspective. I've become, more of a Christian, but it still doesn't matter. The philosophy and the logic kind of brought me here because it makes so much sense. I don't want to make a king of a human being.
Mhm.
Period. I mean, at least in that regards, when America started, we were trying not to do that, but at the same time, people want to make George Washington king, and he refused the title. Like an actual more so-called kingly person would do, or virtuous person would do. Of course, you want to do that. If you believed in any of the bullshit that was kind of spouted off, or whatever, about inalienable rights and whatnot. So you have the music industry, and you can take you can take a look at any significant musicians, whether it be Kid Rock, whether it be I'm trying to remember one particular person, but you can take a look at all these different names and everything, and you actually end up finding out they'll wear shirts with Crowley on it, whatever. You have the man was on MTV for a while with his family, the Osbournes. What's his name?
Ozzy Osbourne.
Ozzy. Yeah, and he has a goddamn song called Mr. Crowley. And you look at the lyrics, and he's the devil behind everything, man. Like, I never really realized it until I got older and I started learning about this stuff. I look at lyrics now, and as I started looking, and I started not just looking for lyrics, but just looking for truth more, and kind of going on this journey that's been very long for me, where I'm keying in on some of the evil that's out there. And I've been told before, and I've read Nietzsche a little bit and so forth, like, be careful of, basically hunting monsters, because you yourself will become a monster. Be careful of staring in the abyss, because the abyss will stare back through you, And I think there's some degree of truth to that. So, one should be careful. I believe, one of you was telling me that, you started looking at the Pizzagate and these things recently more in depth, and it's something that you really do have to take a break from, almost. And I've been not just this. I mean, I love economics. I read philosophy. I like, in terms of economics, praxeology, the study of purposeful human action. I'm a solid. I don't want to say it and act like, because I'm not making like kings of these people. They're not idols at all to me. I write in my books. I write in these books, and I write where I disagree, where I don't think it's logical. I don't see it, or maybe I'm missing something. I might come back to it later. So I really do try to practice what I preach, and I fall short like anybody else, but I'm making an honest effort. But we make kings of these people and everything, and you just keep on seeing again and again and again, and you read these darn lyrics. Look at it sometimes. Some of the songs you may like or whatever, and I'm not saying to anybody don't listen to them or whatever, or you're bad or anything like that. No. I'm saying it's important, because at the end of the day, I mean, so you look at the father of rock and roll, you see how Aleister Crowley, and you can see it just simply through what that man in the 1960s and so forth, the man that affected much of the youth, and he affected the college. He went after people that were influential. Do you see what I'm saying? People that would go into high-level business positions later and different things like that. They'd maybe become doctors and so on. I mean, like my mom and dad, they weren't into any of these movements or anything. And I gather, as much as the TV and so forth would tell you everybody was, I don't think that's the case at all. But I think they attempt to reach those that will have more influence. And so that's what Timothy Leary, I think, reached out to. And then, as they got older, they got into marketing, some of these people and everything, and you see how debauched we've become.
There's two things I want to kind of interrupt you here with this, because number one, in the 50s and 60s, there were all these preachers who were, there was very much a revolt against rock and roll, people burning the Beatles records and things like that. And it was, this is the devil's music. And we kind of laugh at that, Elvis Presley shaking his hips, that's going to tear up. Well, it kind of did. Like, they kind of were right. It was a slippery slope. And, there's another thing too to talk about is there's this pattern I've noticed in pop music of It was Britney Spears, Christina Aguilera, Miley Cyrus, a very innocent young girl that's marketed as the friend of these young girls, and they grow this real psychological attachment, and then boom, then they're twerking. You know what I mean?
And you even see like whether they're working with Nickelodeon, the sitcoms, and they get music like Hannah Montana, whoever she was, maybe that's Cyrus. I mean, I don't really watch TV. I don't pay for cable or anything like that. I watch clips. I try to get as much context as I can when I deem something important or whatever, and I do go about doing that. And I hear from different people, and sometimes it just gets to you one way or the other, even when you don't got the cable and so forth. But the guy's name's like Dan Schneider or something, and there are others like him too. But this is big, fat, horrible man that was working for Nickelodeon for many years, and there are pictures with Gomez, whatever her first name is, I forget, Selena Gomez, and he's an absolute predator, and you see it by the pictures. By God, man. Now, here's the thing. Someone say, well, that's not facts, reason, and evidence, Matthew. Well, by itself, I know it's not, but I start there because there are some people that they've got the eyes to see now. Like, they've gotten enough information. There's something they're kind of in tune with now, whatever it is, the sixth sense or whatever. People awaken out of a slumber one way or the other. And then there are others that are just going deeper in sleep, or unfortunately, some people, they're choosing sides, and they're not choosing to be good. They're not choosing to try to be good. You see them saying, none of us are perfect. Will be. But yeah, you look at this Schneider guy, and he left Nickelodeon. He basically was forced out of it, and there were allegations. And you've got creepazoids. You have like what Corey Feldman. He was a 1980s boy actor. I believe he was one of the people in that movie Stand By Me, which was based on a Stephen King short book called The Body. It's actually a great movie and everything, but he was one of the fellows in there, and the teenage heartthrobs for women, right? The stars. Not all stars are like knowing and they're intentionally bad and they're doing sex magic. And no, actually, some of these stars, unfortunately, they're used and abused for a time, and then they're left for dead. Corey Feldman was on national TV some years ago, and he was trying to come out and he was saying, look, Hollywood has a pedophile problem. And it might have been the bar person on The View or whatever, whatever first name. It was somebody like that. And this person, it was a woman, castrated him and said, that's quite the accusation. You should be ashamed. Because there are so many people that do all this great work and this and that. And literally what happened, this was before the hashtag Me Too, right? But even after hashtag Me Too, God, there was a meme out there right now I found today. I curated and I shared it, and it's great. The meme basically just says, hey, kind of funny how there are all these Me Too people, which the way the Me Too movement was going, they just wanted to lynch people with no facts, reason, or evidence, no actual fucking, no defense at all. This person's guilty, even with nothing out there. I mean, literally, it's sacrifice. It's ritualistic sacrifice of a different sort. You see what I'm saying? Kind of funny, though, but the meme, right? But all of a sudden, Me Too doesn't apply to Jeffrey Epstein. All of a sudden, none of these people these celebrities that were saying Me Too, they're not saying shit about Jeffrey Epstein. Because that industry is rank evil, man. Not everybody in it's bad, okay, but a lot, the way it's run and administered, it is absolutely fiendish, and they protect these people. And part of the reason is not just the sex magic, it's not just because they believe they gain power, and at least bare minimum is a placebo. They're getting something at it, in my opinion, because you look at all the celebrities, all the musicians and so forth, and they pay homage to it, they practice rituals. They get Aleister Crowley crap or whatever. I mean, like stuff he actually used to live with and everything. One of the more famous groups, I'm trying to remember the name. One of the songs they wrote was "Stairway to Heaven."
Led Zeppelin.
And Robert Page, and you had some other people, and they had a lot of misfortune, man, and some of them really came to understand that they were saying that they thought it was what was Robert Page was kind of leading it in terms of engaging in ritual and practicing, engaging in Satanism. And some people want to be like, oh, that's this instead, this Satanism and this some other thing. I don't care what you want to call it. The fact of the matter is, you're engaging in this stuff, and bare minimum, like especially when politicians get close to this and they get towards Moloch and things like that, it is a red flag. I don't understand how people can't like actually connect that and just say this person needs to not be in office. This person is a musician not to be listened to anymore. This person is a leading intellectual thinker, wherever they are from whatever part of any spectrum. As soon as you find out and it's like definitive, like this is what this person believes and practices, you got to cancel it out and get out. And if you hear about it and there's some information there, but it's not conclusive, it's pretty important to at least put it in your back pocket and just be aware of it in the event that you can, prove it later or whatever. That's what I do. I'm not just going to gain close friendship with any freaking person or whatever and not like kind of evaluate cost benefit, and not just cost benefit like money or whatever. It literally is his liability, his this or that. There's some friends, for example, you may be friends with them, but you wouldn't trust them with certain information because they'll blurt it out and they just almost can't help themselves, depending on what the information may be or whatever.
Free the people, free the markets. Decentralize now.
Let me do this at least for the sake of the logic. So we went to the Old Testament. We went to the Catholic Church. They were talking about Aleister Crowley and kind of the music scene up into the 1960s. There's the Cultural Revolution with Timothy Leary and all this shit. That's clearly
I know where to go.
Yeah, keep going.
The Silicon Valley.
Here we go.
Look at you. First of all, this is an actual church now. It's way of the future. Now, this person isn't necessarily, I don't think he's like a leading former executive of one of these tech companies, but he was doing pretty good for himself. I think he's like a millionaire, and he's putting a significant amount of money to start it up or whatever. And this particular one may not, may just be a flash and it doesn't last, whatever. But what he is promoting with his way of the future is in synchronicity, is absolutely congruent with a lot of what is coming as Silicon Valley. So look, and this is something that I looked at for myself. I really fact checked because so I'm going to say the name that should not be named because he's a straw man more than any other person I've ever imagined. Okay, it's Alex Jones. I mean, the guy's like, oh, this and that. I don't care what people think of a particular person when it comes to the information at hand. Okay, and so I remember one of the broadcasts and I looked into it. Absolutely true. And you can find the different articles and everything. You can keep on looking, find the underlying sources, find the collaborating sources too. You're gonna find something. Well, I like them or whatever. You see, you'll find that. It shouldn't even come to that, but it will be that. And one of these. So we've had some whistleblowers, and one of them, at least a few, I think, has come from Google, some from Facebook, and so on. In Google, they actually have people in their own inner conferences and so on, their own events, and they're going up and giving speeches. And there's even one individual said that he identifies as Dragonkin and basically is in a ornate building. That's what he identifies as. And You keep on hearing stuff like this, and you keep on hearing what they want to do with technology. So you have a man named Ray Kurzweil, and he's a so-called futurist. He's the one that coined the singularity. I believe he's the one that actually coined the phrase the singularity. And at such and such a date, I forget what date it is exactly, and maybe like 2040 something or whatever, I can't remember. But at such a date, because I think essentially Moore's law, computing power doubles every whatever the hell it is, and maybe it's quickening or whatever, and it's doubling faster. I can't remember, but it's going to get to such a point that the computer processing power will be sufficient so as to permit us to transfer our very selves, our spirit, so to speak, whatever he calls it officially, and we can be put into basically we can be put into like a computerized environment. We can have avatars. We can last. We can live forever. We can be immortal, essentially, which I'm going to bring into the Bible. That was Lucifer's promise to Adam and to Adam. No, it wasn't to Eve. It was to Eve. And Adam, allowed it to happen and participated out of weakness or whatever. But yeah, he promised to be you'll be like him. You'll be like God if you eat this apple. If you gain the knowledge of good and evil. And it's that original promise I keep on seeing be brought up in cults, ancient cults, somewhat recent cults. It's always a goddamn cult, and it's always a false promise. Ray Kurzweil may believe it though. Now you can find the videos of this, and this is absolutely spectacular. Not like, oh, I love it. I mean, in terms of it'll open your eyes. This is a man that's been on like a presidential commission or two, okay? So he's been reached out to by government, right? He's a man that has a number of patents that go to his name. I can't remember if he's a millionaire or a billionaire, but he's a very, very, very wealthy man, and a lot of people flock to him. A lot of powerful, influential people flock. And they mirror essentially a lot of what he says, and they want what he wants, right? So there are interviews with Ray Kurzweil. And he, among other things, and these may be two separate interviews, but at least in one of them, if not it's the same one, just to bring this line, he's talking about, well, I think we're severely limited in this time and space, and the flesh or whatever, and so he has this avatar thing. It's a very basic one at the time, whatever, and he pretends to be this woman named Ramona, and he's acting like her, and this thing or whatever. And look, some screws are loose there, quite clearly. So, but that's not the biggest deal. So, could be a separate interview or the same one. He goes to talk about what he's doing, project, and about the singularity. And so he's trying to live long enough to get to that magic date, where this is going to happen. With computer process and power sufficient to be able to do some things that he's imagining, and I whatever else. Maybe he's, I haven't read deeply enough into him to see if maybe he actually, does some of the rituals that Crowley, did and things like that. I haven't done that, but he talks, and this is him on video and everything, and he said he's talking about putting all the data pertaining to his dad in there. He misses his dad. He's a very hurt man. And he's getting all the work that his dad did, the notes and everything, the pictures, and he's putting it all into this computer. Fucking, it sounds insane. And so he goes on to say, he's like, yeah, so he's trying to survive long enough to get this singularity so he can have immortality himself. But he's talking about, well, I'm dealing with my dad because we'll bring him back. We're going to bring back my father. The journalist is like, the reporter is like, what do you mean? He's like, oh, yeah. If I get all the information there, everything, all these artifacts and everything, can bring him back. And in a way, he's going to be more real than my dad ever was. Because there's everything he wanted his dad to be that his dad was not. Do you see what's going on here? Like, this is a very influential man.
Yeah, I was looking it up on the way when you were talking of the way of the future. Yes, the founder of the church was the guy who developed some of the self-driving cars and things like that. He was accused of stealing some of Google's data. So it's some scary shit. And he's basically saying, hey, religions are irrelevant now. Become like God. So there's all these strange biblical themes that, yeah, you're right. Even if you aren't religious, you can't ignore some of the symbolism. That's like, as you've said multiple times in this conversation, that it's important. It's coming up. And what
symbols matter.
What kind of pisses me off? It's 1 a.m, so we've got to go, but we haven't even gotten to Pizzagate yet.
It's almost like I know this sounds silly, but it's almost like this is gonna sound stupid, I know, but keep your consciousness here on Earth, and we'll give your soul to the devil.
Yep.
But we are. I knew this was. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it was going to be like there's just so much info, and you're a guy who thinks systematically. So it's like, okay, we've got all these dots that we've been talking about. Let's try to tie this shit together. So it's a huge, massive topic to talk about and to try to do in one podcast. So if you're up to it, we'd love to have you maybe back again, because you just brought it back to Silicon Valley, which is kind of the the 2000s, the 90s, and the internet's kind of taken over. Which it's also interesting to note the internet, I believe, was actually created by the CIA in the '69. So maybe it would be cool to have you come back on and talk about the internets and up to now, Pizzagate. But we're out of time now. But if people want to support Sovereign Money Solutions, how can they do that? Maybe you can tell people a little bit about what it is that you're doing.
Okay, so I started that, and it's a limited liability company, and it's called Sovereign Money Solutions. I kind of had different ideas for it at the very beginning, and they were kind of very isolated. They pertained to obviously money. And I felt like, well, as individuals, we are and we should be and really are sovereign, especially when we act upon it and are logical about it and intent upon defending it. Okay. And we make that good case. And I thought money was one of the most important things. People don't really know the definition of money. They don't know the difference between currency and money. And I wanted to help kind of bring in the argument to decentralize and get away from the fiat money, the fiat fake currency, and to regain our individual, our sovereignty, our power for human action, right? And the centerpiece is obviously money, because we transact in a complex market economy much of the time. But over time, I kind of realized I wanted to branch out anyway, and it got away from money because I just don't think people are interested in it, unfortunately. So Sovereign Liberty Solutions, and that is a Facebook name. And you can actually go to sovereignlibertysolutions.com, sovliberty.com, sovmoney.com, SOVMOA. It all goes to the same thing. I do have a website. I really haven't updated for a while. I basically put up what I kind of consider to be like my own. Much of it has been PhD level type discernment and putting out there. Some of it was more quick or whatever, but for me to put up something on that website as opposed to just Facebook and have only a few comments about it. It's just easier to do Facebook. So I haven't updated that for a while, but you can go on Facebook and just put in Sovereign Liberty Solutions and it'll pop up. Like the page. I mean, I guess that's the way you support me. I really just want to get the information out there. Money for me would just be, obviously, I think a way, just with a lot of well-meaning people, to fund the operation, to expand, and if I did a good enough job, it would be just to maintain a very basic lifestyle, such as that I wouldn't have to waste my time doing things to get these biosurvivable energy tokens called money or currency. And but yeah, I don't know. There you go. Sovereign Liberty Solutions on Facebook's probably the best, and it's probably going to be taken off at some point. But I do have the website, and you can find it. And at some point, I'll probably have to be finding a quick way to update stuff on that and whatever. But the most recent article is like 2 years old at this point. But it's timeless. A lot of it's timeless. I try to hit on principles. I bring it down to principles, and I get to the nuts and bolts, the underlying root level reason as to why things happen. Like, why is healthcare so expensive? Well, I worked in the industry, and I know a lot anyway outside of that.
Like I said, we've only really scratched the surface. We want to talk about Pizzagate. We were just kind of doing the background. So this might be a good two-parter. So hopefully, if you're cool with it, we'd like to maybe have you back on. But yeah, thanks again for talking with us and giving us a new episode.